Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palmer Show. And in this episode, I have with me a mental health trailblazer, founder of the Global Institute of Children's Mental Health and media expert, who is changing the way we view and treat children's mental health. Her work has helped thousands reverse the most challenging conditions: ADHD, anxiety, mood, Lyme, and PANS and PANDAS, using proven holistic therapies. She is often featured on dozens of media outlets: Fox, CBS, NBC, Forbes, Parents, and the New York Times. Roseanne Capana-Hodge, welcome to the Dave Palmer Show.
Well, thank you, Dave, for having me and talking about mental health. We all need to be talking about ways to bring joy and happiness and reduce stress in our life right now.
Certainly have. And in this global pandemic and possible post-pandemic world we're entering into, it's a big topic. It's been a big topic, probably as much as the COVID itself, really, as well as other things like climate change and everything else. But obviously, mental health is now something that people look at as much as physical, even more so, actually. So first question is, why is everyone struggling with mental health, and what can they do to reverse and reduce the symptoms?
Yeah. Well, I love that you say that this has really become a topic that's become as big as COVID, because I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that people are realizing that mental health before the pandemic was at an all-time, low crisis level. People are struggling, kids are struggling, and they're realizing that without good mental health, nothing sort of seems to matter. And so they're actually looking at their mental health and trying to do things about it. So, why is everyone struggling right now? And I think there's different reasons. I think some people have very much been affected financially, relationship-wise, work-wise, the stress of homeschooling their kids and trying to educate their kids. These are very real things that are stressors, right? Yeah. And then I think there's a group of people that already had issues, Dave, that felt that they were exacerbated during this time due to isolation, just chronic stress. And then I think there's people that for the first time may be struggling. And why? Because of some of the other reasons, but also because I think the world is at a place where everyone feels like they're having a hard time. Everyone has anxiety. The loneliness, right, is really taking its toll. We are social beings and we're not designed to be, so isolated from people. I mean, I personally miss hugs. I miss seeing my friends.
Well, I mean, There's a chemical like oxytocin and things like that. There's all the chemical stuff. I mean, obviously, when people are socially bonded, there's all kinds of things going on in the brain, chemically, isn't there? Yeah. No, so
come out. You got to get really good at smiley eyes. But the masks are hiding, and so we're not getting that reciprocal warmth back and forth, right? And so it's really a time where people are. This is very extended isolation, stress. It's long-term chronic stress and anxiety, depression, feelings of wanting to harm yourself amongst kids and young adults are at extraordinary high levels right now. So it's a major factor. And, unless people are actively doing something every day, and that's how you combat this, if you have to actively be doing things to regulate your nervous system. And nobody's immune from stress, right? Like Dave, every day I do something every single day, multiple times a day. And what are some of those things? Breath work.
Yeah.
Meditation, yoga, mindfulness, gratitude speak, but it has to be very intentful and you have to do the work. Just like saying, I want to lose weight, and use your treadmill as a clothing rack. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, well, that does happen quite often. People kind of like get into I'll buy this and I'll be doing this every day, and it kind of gets in the cupboard after about 2 weeks, and that's just the way it goes. It's a bit like after Christmas, everyone signs up for the gym, but it kind of never lasts, does it? Really? So
right,
just one of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I wind up, this is what I teach people all about is all of these sort of science-backed ways that are natural and work. And exercise is one of those things to help you, right? And, there's the more, the less cardio-based exercises do a better job of regulating your nervous system, right? So yoga, stretching, Tai Chi, not to say that cardio exercise isn't an amazing way to get those neurotransmitters and chemicals going in the brain and body, the lymph system and all this, right? But exercise is also one of those things that can be really helpful and also can build community too, because you can be out in the community, you can have social connections, you could call your neighbor Betty. If you're still social distancing, you can do that outside. I mean, I've never seen more people outside in my life, Dave.
What, now, you mean?
Now, I mean, I live in the Northeast in the United States, and, people were out walking.
So it's like Boston, Connecticut, that kind of area, is it? New England?
Yes. Yep. Oh, yeah. I'm in Connecticut, the suburbs of New York.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it did get bad there with New York in particular.
Yes.
But I think they kind of got hold of it. So
they got a hold of it really ahead of the game because they were very strict in their procedures, and it was bad, Dave. I mean, even at our center with a staff of about 20, we had 3 staff members lose a parent to COVID. Yeah. I mean, it was very extreme in our area.
Yeah. But now people are starting, I mean, it's like in the UK, people are starting to get back to normal. They reckon that now people can actually start hugging people and things like that. So, they reckon everyone can have a normal summer, and they're even thinking of experimental kind of, parties. Well, like people in crowds in events and things like that. So,
yeah.
Let's see how that goes.
Opening back up. The world is starting to resume. And, in the beginning of the pandemic, I talked about reentry panic syndrome, right? I coined that term. And it was about coming back to the world and being afraid. And now we have reentry anxiety because people still have valid concerns about illness, but they also have been so isolated. And some people have had a lot of, mental health symptoms like irritation, anger, feelings of fearfulness and sadness, emotional, dysregulation where you're happy and sad the next moment. And coming back in the world seems very anxious to them, right? Especially because people have been, as the world has been in crisis, there's different ways to approach it, right? So some people become better at who they are and other people lash out, right? Because of their anger. And so lashing out and a lot of, sort of social media hate and flashes of inappropriate comments to others as people are very stressed is sort of become the norm, right?
Yeah.
And that's anxiety producing for a lot of people.
So with that said, now with what's going on around the world, and obviously we're entering into the post-pandemic era now with what we're describing of how things are opening up now. What would you say, how would you describe what you say is the 4 steps to building better coping skills and resilience for everyone, for our listeners and anyone else to take?
Yeah. So I talk about the REPS protocol, and it's a really simple 4-step way to get your nervous system regulated, to build good coping skills. It doesn't matter if you're 2 or 3 years old or you're 80 years old. This is stuff that you can do. And what it is, it's respirate, it's envision. So it's using visualization, it's P, positivity, and S, stress management. And so it all starts with breath, Dave. If we are not calming our autonomic nervous system, which regulates our stress response, and for people who don't know about the science behind our autonomic nervous system, it's in charge of dealing with whatever stressor you're experiencing. A little stressor, like, you drop something out of the fridge and it hits your foot, or a big stressor, you just found out, your mom has thyroid disease or whatever it is, something more significant. And so we want to keep our autonomic nervous system in a calm state. I call it the chill out hot tub state. And that's the parasympathetic dominant. And then sympathetic dominant is stress state. And this is where a lot of people are living right now, Dave. And so when we do breath work, it brings us automatically into a parasympathetic state. And the more we do it, the more it helps us to really repel stress. I call it stress inoculate. And so my favorite breath is a 4-7-8, in through the mouth for 4 seconds, hold for 7, and then exhale for 8. And you want to do that 3 times a day for 3 rounds each time. And then the next part is envision and visualizing. I think that's where people get stuck, Dave. I mean, you're always about teaching people cope, right? And it's about seeing success, right? And seeing success doesn't have to be the huge thing. It could be the little thing. It could be being, yesterday was a rough day, but today I'm going to see today being successful because of this, and seeing that end result. And then the P positivity is saying positive things to yourself and saying it out loud, because our brain believes what you tell it. So tell it good things. Don't say, I'm not going to do that, right? Because just like a batter that goes up to bat, he doesn't say, I'm going to stink at this. He says, I'm going to knock this out of the park.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then S, right? Absolutely.
Yep.
And S is stress management. So you got to take that 10 minutes a day. You got to pick something and you got to do it. You owe it to your nervous system. And, when we calm down our autonomic nervous system and really get it to regulate, you can focus better. You can be a better husband, wife, friend, parent, and your health improves. It's not just your mental health, but it's your physical health. We cannot live in a chronic stress state. And that's what people are recognizing, Dave, is they're done. I hear the word overwhelmed at least 10 times a day from people.
Yeah. So tell us,
so we can do these simple things.
Yeah. I mean, give us some tips of how people can implement reps into their daily lives and in different scenarios. I mean, obviously, I put it generalized saying the post-pandemic world, but there's lots of other things going on that's not necessarily connected with the pandemic that stresses people out. So how can people implement it in various aspects of people's lives and different communities?
Difficult family members.
Yeah.
Sure. There's so many things that we face in our lives, from traffic to, having a difficult boss or a job that you hate that can do that. So it really is about intensely incorporating these things. So I like to start out my day with this. When we miss the opportunity. So you should start your day with breath work. I mean, that is just an easy thing. Before your feet bed, do your 3 rounds, take positivity, the success of the day, and say, I'm going to have a great day. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to have an amazing podcast this morning. I'm going to have a great conversation with Dave, and we're going to help people about mental health. And I do those kind of things all day, Dave.
Yeah.
I don't just let things happen. I control what my brain believes.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And that's really how you do it. And you can use this in the moment if you're stressed. But really what this is designed to do is to just keep you in that nice parasympathetic relaxed state so that you are able to cope with whatever comes your way more easily.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, these are very good tips to use. You've also got a book out. It's called It's Gonna Be Okay. Can you tell us more about your book?
Yeah. So my book is called It's Gonna Be Okay. And I called it that because it's the first thing I tell parents who work with me, because when you have a child with special needs, which I have 2, there's nothing more important than your kids.
Yeah, of course.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And right. And if your child struggles for the moment, maybe they're having some friendship issues, maybe they're really struggling because they're unfocused, or your kid has dyslexia, or your kid has ADD, or whatever is going on, it is really, really worrisome for a parent. And I want parents to know it's going to be okay, that you don't have to believe that your kid's going to, live in your basement or not go to college or be successful or have a good life, because that's what happens. we get so afraid, right? And there's a continuum of issues. Some kids are really impaired, right? Like your child has, intellectual disabilities or developmental delays or physical problems. I mean, but there's always hope. And I think we're in a place where people don't believe in hope. And so this book, It's Going to Be Okay, is about the 8 pillars of mental health and how we can reduce and reverse symptoms. And Dave, it's really my life's work put into this book. And
Right,
all the research that I've been gathering, there's over 40 pages of research citations. And I walk people through these science-backed natural ways on how to tackle, I mean, you name it, in a mental health problem. These are the ways that you really break free from those things holding you back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how can parents change the kids' mental health?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to change mental health for a kid or an adult, and we're not having this conversation, which is why I get out and do all of these things. We all think that a pill is the only way to fix things, right? And we all think that every mental health problem is a result of a chemical imbalance in the brain. And that's just good marketing from pharma. And when I find most people, Dave, have mental health issues due to long-term chronic stress, right? A real situational stress or something really going on, like, something significant, and chronic inflammation. So chronic inflammation is a big source of neurodevelopmental disorders, mental health issues. And so when we start seeing that there are other sources, we then realize there are other ways to tackle mental health issues besides medications. So, some of the things parents can do is really what I talked about, this stress management. They can do this for themselves, and how they take care of themselves has such a ripple effect in such a positive way. We put our own oxygen mask on. Parents are better able to show up as parents, right? Because sometimes having a kid, or your kid can be annoying. Your kid can be true, right? Difficult to manage. You could be short-tempered. And so when we're regulated, we are able to show up as the best parent we possibly can be. We can be better friends, all of those things. But we're more importantly showing our kids that we value ourselves and that we are modeling good self-care. And if you really want your kids to be rock stars and be successful kids, which is what I talk a lot about, and we have a parenting community called Raising Successful Kids, it's really about getting them to learn how to tolerate stress. Because if you can't tolerate little things, you're going to be one miserable, unhappy person who's anxious and depressed, Dave. And it's about building the system to really learn how to cope.
Right, I see.
And that's regulating the nervous system. Parents come in with parenting techniques. I share all that stuff. I talk about the 8 pillars, including sleep and diet and detoxification and nutrition. Talk a lot about supplements. People are really interested in supplements. And I give you all the science behind which supplements work for things like ADD and OCD and depression, because there's some really amazing tools out there.
Yeah. So what would be the long-term impact of the pandemic on children?
Yeah, Dave, we can look at other major events, but what we know is that there are protective factors and risk factors. So the kids that have risk factors are going to be more likely to have a long-term impact. Right. We are getting research out of Asia, Europe, and the United States, and they're all showing this increase in anxiety and depression.
Right.
No surprise. But we're also seeing something really surprising, Dave. Go ahead.
No, I'll just say, what are the risk factors? What would be the risk factors for that to be?
Yeah, let's talk about risk factors. So risk factors would be things like already having a mental health issue, living in a house with somebody with a mental health issue, low income, stressors, right?
Right.
We're also seeing poor coping skills, right? So all of these things that are risk factors for mental health means you're more likely going to have issues. And then what are protective factors?
Yeah.
You are somebody with good coping skills. You're living in a, right? You are being provided for, you're being nurtured and cared for. You have a good peer group. You're, socially, emotionally well-adjusted already to begin with. There's a lot of positive risk factors. Protective factors that help us manage stress. Like, why does two people experience the same thing? One person falls apart, one person doesn't. It's what they bring to the table, Dave, right?
Yeah.
So if they have a nervous system that can tolerate more, they're going to be able to roll with it. They're going to be able to handle a situation completely different than somebody else who has a history of being anxious or OCD or depression. So those are really big things. And, one of the surprising things that's coming out of the research out of the United States survey research is that if young adults and teens, they have a 50% risk of moderate to severe depression if somebody in their immediate family had COVID.
Yeah, right.
So we have all these people who've had COVID and in their family, it's very stressful. And there's a fallout, with the kids.
I think COVID itself can make them.
That's
can trigger. The virus itself could do it.
Yeah, I work with a population called of kids and adults that have something called PANS, and basically it's an infectious or toxin trigger of a psychiatric or cognitive problem, and COVID is one of the triggers. And I'm seeing I've had people with psychosis from COVID.
Yeah.
So, it's real.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, there's also, and I'll talk about this a lot and believe in it, a mind-body connection. So, of course, it would be a vicious circle, wouldn't it, really, if your mind's going and then you mute. Because, of course, stress can suppress the immune system as well, so that's physical and that's physiological. So there's a lot going on, chemistry with the brain chemistry and the body's physiology.
Yeah. Well, when you're in a sympathetic dominant state due to stress, every single resource in your body, including your immune system components, your hormones, your neurotransmitters, all go to trying to fend off the stress. They don't know what it is. And all the troops go there. So, so then your system gets hijacked. So, that's why it all starts with regulating the nervous system. We're much more capable of, just being the best person that we can possibly be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to remind our audience what the 4 steps to building better coping skills and resilience is, and also tell them where they can find more about your work, Roseanne.
Yeah. So the REPS protocol, respirate, envision, possibility, stress management. And you can find me everywhere, Dave, at as Dr. Roseanne, and it's DrRoseann. I'm on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram as that. And you go to drroseann.com. We work with people, as I said, virtually.
Right. Yeah.
Neurofeedback and biofeedback and other brain-based therapies.
Absolutely. Well, anyone listening, Roseanne's website will be on the show notes, so you can always refer back to the show notes and click on a link, and you'll find Roseanne's website there. So, Roseanne, really great pleasure having you on the show to talk about this very important aspect of people's lives, and it's very important to look at it and implement it like yesterday. So, thanks very much for coming and sharing this very important knowledge to my audience today.
Always stick with it, and you can change your mental health. You have to just believe in it and see that happening.
Yeah. Well, Roseanne, once again, thanks a lot for coming on Dave Palmer Show.
Thank you.